You're Joe Biden's campaign manager, and he's down 20 points in the polls. How do you salvage the Titanic called the Biden campaign? As you guys can plainly see, 59% of Americans disapprove of the president. Now, this is interesting because this was a couple of weeks ago and it's only gotten worse. As you guys can notice, he's down negative 23 according to Reuters and Ipsos. And if you even look at RCP, again, it's all the more tragic. This margin's not so bad, but it also quantifies how down he is overall, though. He is down by an aggregate of about negative 15 percentage points down to like negative 23 ish. And so it's a very horrible thing. But we're going to go line item by line item and figure out what we're going to veto and how we're going to fix this. Let me start you off with some history, okay? So if we look back about 15 or so years, we can see that in June 11th of the fourth year of each president's lifetime, we see that Biden again at 40, Trump at 42, Obama at 48.3, Bush at 47. And so you can see how everything is within a ballpark of about 10 points. And so however bad things can be, it can't get much worse than this. That's about all the hope I can give you, but I will spin this another way. So first and foremost, Donald Trump is also pretty unpopular. Again, not as bad as Joe Biden, but again, he is not a favorable alternative. And so it's not a question of Joe Biden is bad and therefore I'm going to easily hop on into the other place. It's to say like, okay, both stink and which one is less bad. That's for a lot of people in the middle. And that's the sort of types that you really want to win. That's who Joe Biden won the undecided vote, by the way, in 2020. And so you got to really hammer in onto what went wrong. Okay, you're the shepherd. You had those voters at some point 4 years ago. What happened to make you lose them? And let's figure that out. So, as a few of you other nerds know, like me, there was such a thing as Bill Clinton's 1992 victory over the beleaguered Bush campaign, but also more significantly, in my opinion, in this video topic, is triangulation becoming popularized. If you want to take extra credit class, you can go and watch more videos in the tangential subject of Tony Blair's reign in the mid 2000s and 90s for more examples of neoliberal centrism. But I think Joe Biden ought to really hammer in on this. Now, triangulation was really popularized by his chief political advisor, who I'm LARPing for Biden being today, and it's Richard Morris. Now, Richard Morris had an idea of you are unpopular as the leftist president. It's time to kind of sway to the middle. And again, it's important to realize that while there's more voters outside than there are in your camp, you have to realize that you cannot lose your own base too. And so it's a very delicate process that needs to be done with finesse. Now, this is a very powerful political tool, and it's completely Machiavellian in premise. Even in 1996, in the State of Union address, President Clinton at the time said that the era of big government is over. Now, imagine a Democrat saying that today. That's what's actually wrong with the party when you really think about it, is that you need to be able to be a little bit more not plastically, but more rubbery. Okay, you got to be able to kind of shift with the wind. And a lot of people might criticize that, but what is Biden if not for a generic slot in for president? And so you really need to fit into whatever's most popular, and we're going to get into that. Now, when it comes to the economy, folks, President Biden is doing horrible. He's down negative 16.8%. Now, that's no surprise given how bad everything is. The I word inflation is on everybody's mind. You go to the grocery store, bag of Cheetos is $5. It's horrible. But that being said, there are ways to remedy this. Now, there's two major ways one could fix an inflation problem. You could either slow down the economy artificially by increasing interest rates and kind of choking it that way, or you could try to spend your way out of it and kind of kick the can down the road. Now, unironically, he should kick the can down the road in this case. What that means is provide more economic stimulus and to really run up the debt. Now, the debt might be hammered in by Republicans as being a big deal, but as of 10 years ago, when it occurred that there was a sequestration in 2011 even by the Republican House majority at the time, led by the Tea Party, you notice that Obama was able to really spin off that and say the Republicans were trying to take away your government rights, your government-funded provisions. And so Joe Biden can really afford to spend a ton of money and also be able to castigate the Republicans if he's clever. Again, I'm not saying Joe Biden is articulate enough to do it. I'm just saying that he can get surrogates to provide the message and he can play the aloof kind of figurehead. And that's okay for most people. If they believe that everything's managed just fine and he's just a figurehead, I think they don't have a problem with the salinity at the visceral level. Hence why he's still pulling at 40, despite I think a good 85% of people noticing that he's not all the way there yet. Now, what's another key element of this election? While he is, basically his disapproval is horrific, for the lack of a better term. Part of the reason is self-inflicted wounds. When you're triangulating as a Democrat, what you ought to do is meet the Republicans in the middle when it comes to the economics of things, because of course that is very popular for most people. Chief among them being, again, do not compromise on the budget, spend more money. That's popular. Now, what's another thing you can do though? You could expand fracking licenses. He unnecessarily did that. You had Donald Trump with energy independence. He always brings this up in a stump speech. What is President Biden? What is he going to do? He's going to say, well, I paused these leases, but why? For what reason? And so you need to free up the gas industry, and you're going to take some flack from the Democrats. But guess what? You need to get the economy back in order. And guess what happened in 2014? The economy was actually trending positively for Barack Obama when he gave the Oval Office to Donald Trump. And that's due in large part to the fracking shale boom in North Dakota, the Bakken oil field, etc. All these phenomena actually fomented a kind of decent democratic economic scenario for 2016. And so when you look at it that way, Joe Biden desperately needs another 2024 version of that. So 10 years removed, he totally needs that. Now, looking into some other variables that could really help Joe Biden's odds, chief among them being who the VP is. In my opinion, Joe Biden ought to really pick Michelle Obama. Now, this is a far off prediction. This is a best case. She's pretty much issued herself out of the running for that. That being said, if he could pull that off, that'd be great. Her approval rating, for whatever reason, is about 20 points higher than Barack's, and Barack is already way more popular than Joe, and so that's very obvious. When it comes to Kamala, the reason why she's not off the ticket, despite being less popular universally than even Joe himself, is because of the awkwardness and the unprofessionalism in kicking her out the ticket, obviously. That being said, if you replace her with Michelle, then if on paper she's more popular, then any of those qualms would be really easily forgotten about. And so that's very important to know long game wise. When it comes to Trump's VP pick, he's unlikely to pick Noam, obviously, but that would be the dumbest pick for him to make, in my opinion. And so there you go. Now, when it comes to the map in and of itself, there's a spending guideline that I want to give you guys. So in 2020, Brad Parscale, who was Trump's campaign manager, I believe, early on in the campaign during the summer, on the onset of the virus, we saw him spending money in New Mexico and places that were not really super Republican. We saw Trump rally in New Hampshire, where he lost ground, and in Minnesota, where he lost ground as well. And you can notice that those sort of bona fides are not really what you need to chase after. And so when it comes to spending, Joe Biden needs to spend in the blue states that I'm hovering over right here, okay? So Joe Biden can win the election if he were to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And those swing states are the ones that he's doing the strongest in relative to the other ones like Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. And so look at it that way. Yes, would it be better if you won the other states that you did in 2020? Yes, but that's not really on the cards now. And so it'd be really, really, really important that, while the funding for Democrats has been 3-1 pro them over Republicans, it's very evident that the fundraising gap is getting more narrow after this conviction with Trump. And so it's really, really important that Joe just centers the money over those three states. And it might be tempting to say, well, you know what? We're getting killed in Nevada. We're getting killed in Arizona. But you don't need those states. Mathematically, I already got you 270. And so you need not to focus on anything else and maybe venture into Omaha and get that congressional district on your side, the second one that is. And really, realistically, that's your election prospect. Moving on into the endeavor of foreign policy, we see that Joe Biden is doing even worse somehow than the economy. He's down negative 25. This is due to malaise from the Ukraine debacle. Even beyond that, we have a malaise from the notion of the Afghanistan withdrawal. Now, that is not really, that's not very pertinent to this poll right now, but it's to say that it generally builds up a resume that is not good, and it's not kosher, in particular with Israel. We're talking about a war that people saw as unnecessary, where Donald Trump can confidently kind of BS and say it wouldn't have happened under him, which I agree, but still it's like just reaching. And still, because Biden's foreign policy appeal is so meager and very basic, it becomes kind of an open issue of, maybe Trump wouldn't have let these wars go on, and especially for not as long as they have. And so it's really evident that Biden needs to switch up the whole paradigm. I think Joe Biden needs to give up all the leverage he has. He really doesn't have an establishment superiority complex. He doesn't have what Obama did, where he could have said, we're going to do piecemeal deals with the Russians and et cetera, or a red line with Syria and survive. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think Biden needs to become more of a dovish person. What he really needs to do is kind of copy Trump low key. So my specific strategy for Joe Biden in this case is to appease both the pro-Palestine people in your camp, which is a strong fraction, and you take the Israeli Zionist side, which is a big portion of the country. You got to mend these two together somehow. The way I would do it personally is, first, you got to back up a two-state solution, which I think he does. And even beyond that, you need to call for a ceasefire. But the third thing you would want to do is, when that doesn't work because you have no political credibility, when you're unpopular as the president of the United States, over in Israel, you got to say, you know what, if you want this aid, you're going to need to have X and Y provisions for humanitarian support, for policing civilian casualties, etc. And when you do this, you can appease the Palestinian side while also saying like, okay, well, why like these conditions on the aid are completely reasonable on the American side, and so then why not condition them? And so if the Israelis don't take it, then it makes them look bad, which in case makes Biden's kind of fence-sitting approach actually work out. And so when he does something proactive, that's also viscerally telling the Gen Z vote that he's losing and hemorrhaging to Trump, saying like, okay, well, maybe this guy does actually care. And I think that's a foolproof solution to that. In regards to the Ukraine, it's a lot more difficult. In there, I would probably scapegoat the corruption in Ukraine. I know that's a touchy subject with Hunter, but if you cared about Hunter Biden in 2024, then you're not going to vote for Joe anyway. So that doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. Instead, worry about making Zelensky out to be a bad guy. In fact, what you need to do is say, you know what? Audit the money that, and I don't know how you would do this, but basically try to audit and subpoena as much information about where the American dollars from us, the taxpayer, go to Ukraine, and try to really parse through where the money's going. I don't know how efficient the spending is. I doubt it really is. Ukraine's a backwater, maybe worse than Mexico at that case when it comes to corruption. And so if you can really build a case on, wow, Zelensky's really bad, then all of a sudden a lot of liberal people would say like, hey, you're not even fighting the Russian cause because you're not even using the money right. And so you really don't value us. And so you know what? Let's get a deal done. And so Zelensky gets scapegoated. Biden looks like he's prudential again by imposing not quotas, but requirements on the aid to Israel. He appeases both sides with that in theory. Also, he makes the best of a bad situation by saying, okay, Russia, you're probably going to win, but also Zelensky sucks and I'm going to issue myself up from, I'm going to disavow. And from there, you're going to be able to actually probably salvage some sort of credibility with Eastern Europe too. With inflation, I already covered this. This is extremely difficult to take care of. It's a negative 26% spread. But like I said, he needs to advocate a lot of public spending, a lot of student loan forgiveness, that sort of thing, because not only is it popular, but also it'll alleviate the inflation by stimulating people's incomes, which again, I know in legal, like in technical theory, it doesn't work that way long term, but short term, when it comes to an election in less than a year, then yes, this would be the smart thing to do. Now, when it comes to crime, on the other hand, this is interesting. So in crime, what Joe needs to do is harken back to the 1994 stance that actually was supported by Clinton at the time, which was a part of the triangulation process. As you can see how tied in everything is. It's a beautiful knot I'm making. But when it comes to crime, we need to understand that what Biden needs to do is not overall change the policies of the government, because he can't really do that in any effective way. But what he needs to do is scapegoat certain people. When it came to Obama scapegoating people in the Ferguson area about riots that were going on in like 2014, that was prudential. When it came to using Eric Holder as a chess piece on the checkerboard or a chessboard of law, that was important. Now, when it came to Biden, he has not done that. Merrick Garland looks like an idiot right now, getting roasted and felted by Matt Gaetz of all people, which tells you that, it's such a lowly position to be Biden's hatchet man, as it seems like Merrick Garland seems to be right now. And even beyond this, of course, folks, when it comes to Biden's criminal policy, again, you can't really change things, but what you can do is scapegoat certain people and divert the blame from you into specific people. There have been elections in San Francisco, DA elections, that are actually becoming more and more conservative, radically so, in very quick time, because things have gone out of control with liberal policy. What President Biden needs to do is scapegoat these people. Pick your top 5 DAs in the most liberal precincts and areas and actually scapegoat them and say, you know what, you are out of line with my policies on X and Y. And if they're not, then at least kind of spin it that way. And so that when the crime issue comes up, say, well, you know what, Joe or Donald, New York, X and Y, this place, Seattle, all this crime, well, these DAs I've disavowed, etc. And so that would show a turning of the leaf, but in a way that also is still within the religion of the left when it comes to policy. Again, just scapegoating the white attorneys, that might actually work for him. Okay, when it comes to immigration, you've got to, if you're President Biden, you've got to meet the middle. Okay, you got to meet in the middle when it comes to the immigration issue. The liberal predisposition here is not going to work. The public support is against you, Joe. So what I would do is I would say, you know what? You're going to build the wall. You're going to build the wall. You're going to say things have gone out of line, and that previously what was good intentioned open borders has resulted in X and Y negative consequences. Now, while doing this, you also might lose the left, obviously. And so you got to really caveat it by saying, I love Hispanics. It's not all of them, but clearly they are being targeted by their own people, whether that be MS-13 or whatever have you, the works even, and then scapegoat them. And how Donald Trump insinuates that there's terrorists coming into America, which is a pretty facetious thing to say, but still use that, President Biden. Say like, you know what, there are terrorists coming in. And I've been hesitant to acknowledge this because I really love the diversity of our country. But when it comes to a point, I need to protect what's already here. And so that's the sort of logic. You need to really take the Trump position on most things, even when it comes to immigration. But I think the signature piece would be the wall, because that's the most symbolic part of this whole dilemma. And so I think a building the wall and actually getting it done would be great. And especially when it comes to Donald not even finishing it, then you could say, well, you know what? I got more done than you, despite you running on it. And I think that would actually be really smart. And when it comes to the policies like catch and release and whatnot, there were a flurry of executive orders done during the virus era, where during lockdown, Donald Trump was able to use statutes and old stuff to really lower legal immigration. I think Biden could get away with doing this in a way that does not come off as distasteful, and do it all under the premise of it's temporary, that I want more of you guys here, but we're currently full. And that's completely reasonable, I think, to a lot of liberals in the middle too. And so I think that's the way you would turn that around. So overall, the direction of the country is atrocious, like I was saying. It is really, really negative. In fact, when you look at the numbers, you'll really see. Okay, so RCP froze on me, so we're going to skip that for now. We're in a time crunch. Also, abortion, again, a positive issue for Democrats. That's got to be your number one leading issue. And then a tertiary one has got to be the Jan 6 sort of thing. But again, that is also not really appealing to undecideds, because it's not a motivating reason. It's something that already happened 3 years ago. And so it's like, okay, well, you can hearken it back to that, but still, it's like, so you know what I mean. In summary, if I were Joe Biden's campaign manager, this is what I would do in the macro sense. Obviously, I don't have exact policy notes, but it's kind of indicative of how bad things are, where I'm trying to really, really try to scramble to rationalize a winning position here. And it's very tenuous at best, a way that he could win at this point. Like I said, when I showed you the map, it was a 270 electoral vote victory. That's probably the best case. And it's going to be a smaller victory theoretically than even 2020. But I think he could still theoretically pull this out if I were to be running his stuff. But thank God that I'm not, because I think Donald Trump will crush him in less than 6 months. And I'll see you then. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below if you disagree. And I'll see you all in the next one. Adios.